Ferguson became involved with Rovers defender Dominic Stein. His headbutt went unpunished by the officials, but someone with a bit more power than an SFA referee was watching.
Through to Duncan Ferguson. There's his way past Grant, but it's punished for that.
Duncan Ferguson is renowned not just for his muscle, but for his temper on the field, and despite his tough man displays, it hides a hidden love for Everton Football Club. Would he be the man to send centre-halves running, fearing for their lives, and be immortalised as the soul and spirit of the club? This video goes deep into the complex character of one of the true Everton greats, from prison to ardent supporter of Everton. This is Duncan Ferguson, aka Big Dunk. Well, Big Dunk was born on December 27, 1971. Raw power and aggression marred his footballing career, one that started way back in 1990 at Dundee United. A £3.5 million move to Rangers in 1993 then made him Britain's most expensive player at the time. The Tartan Army witnessed his talent as he played for Scotland in Euro '92. It was in the English Premier League that Ferguson really made his mark. Everton came calling in 1994, and it would be there that he etched his name in football folklore, both for his goal-scoring exploits and his fiery temper. Standing at 6'3", Ferguson certainly was a daunting and dominant figure. His ability in the air was unmatched. During his playing days, it wasn't just his goals that made the headlines. The Big Scot had a knack for doing something extraordinary, and there was no surprise that he normally found himself in hairy moments, both on and off the pitch. Duncan Ferguson Big Dunk's journey began in the rough and tumble of junior football with Cast Thistle, hailing from the very heartland of Scotland, Stirling. His raw talent was spotted early, and Dundee United snapped him up as a schoolboy. A sign of things to come, he bulldozed his way to victory in the BP Youth Cup in 1990. But Big Dunk's journey had just started. Who knew he was going to attract a multitude of controversies throughout his career? Before we unearth Big Dunk's controversies, make sure to smash that like and subscribe button. Now, back to the video. Big Dunk's aggressive plays always managed to land him in hot water, red card after red card. That's what Ferguson became infamous for. And Ferguson, he just looked the other way like he did nothing wrong at the time.
He's got his throw. Bobic, meantime, had tangled with Ferguson. Bobic has stayed down. Ferguson has been summoned. Trouble, big trouble. Ferguson, skipper, off.
That same year, the Tartan Army got their first taste of Ferguson's ferocity when, at the age of 16, he made his debut for Dundee United against old firm giants Rangers at their intimidating Ibrox. The wee lad didn't shrink under the bright lights, he seemingly fed off them. His first goal, an injury-time winner against East Fife in the Scottish Cup, was an explosive arrival. By the 1991-92 season, Ferguson was already an established first-team player, a towering giant in defence, his raw strength and aerial ability making him a force. Those tallies of 41 appearances and 16 goals in that campaign consolidated his position even further as the club's top scorer, a record he equalled the following year with 33 appearances and 15 goals. This purple patch didn't come unnoticed, as the call to Scotland's national team would follow shortly. It all changed for Scottish football then, in 1993, when Rangers paid out a British record of £4 million to bring Ferguson to Ibrox. The pressure was quite something, and the young striker was thrown in at the deep end. He responded with a last-minute screamer against Motherwell, followed by a hat-trick against Arbroath to announce the raw megabucks talent that had just arrived.
Against relegation-doomed Wraith Rovers, Duncan Ferguson became involved with Rovers defender Dominic Stein. His headbutt went unpunished by the officials, but someone with a bit more power than an SFA referee was watching.
Rangers' Duncan Ferguson has been charged with assaulting Wraith Rovers player.
But beneath that cocky bravado and that eye for a goal, there lay a simmering, seething anger. He was a very volatile mixture, a powder keg waiting for the spark. and a spark ignited in a game against Wraith Rovers. He faced John McStay, lost control, and sent his head into the player. A clear headbutt to McStay, knocking him to the ground. The referee missed it, but the cameras didn't. The charge? Assault. The sentence? A staggering 3 months behind bars. To the country, it was a fall from grace. To anyone who knew them both, it was probably an explosion waiting to happen. The pressure cooker environment at Rangers, coupled with his own fiery temper, created a perfect storm. Former teammate Mark Hateley hinted at the underlying issues. He was a big fish in a small pond at Dundee United, but Rangers was a whole different ballgame. The question was, could Big Dunk harness this aggression into something productive, or would it continue to be his downfall? With Rangers then behind bars, the career of Ferguson teetered. But football is that relentless beast, making no allowances for the man. It waits for no man. Everton, scrapping for points in the Premier League, through Mosh's sense of determination, dragging Everett clear of relegation. The icing on the cake, of course, came with the triumph in the FA Cup in 1994-95, once more illustrating the knack that this big man appeared to have for coming to life in the biggest of moments. Yet the following season played out very differently again. Injury and imprisonment left his season in tatters. Yet when fit, he remained a potent threat. Less than half a season earlier, he scored a hat-trick against Bolton Wanderers, becoming the first man to notch 3 headers in a Premier League match, underlining his raw power. But they struggled on, and then the Everton hierarchy made a decision that really did send shockwaves through the Goodison faithful. In November 1998, Ferguson was sold to Newcastle United for a hefty fee. It was the move that Evertonians could not have possibly expected to settle with a good taste. And then, in another twist of fortune, or maybe a desperate gamble, along came Everton once more in 2000. The prodigal son was coming back, and with him, some flicker of hope for the Toffees in their struggle. Perhaps this change of scenery would for once temper the beast inside.
Oh, there certainly was an elbow by Ferguson.
But old habits die hard. On his return to the league, Ferguson marked his return with normal fanfare. A brace on his second debut, this time against Charlton Athletic, rekindled hopes of a fairy tale comeback. Yet it was the very same volatile character. It erupted naturally in a game against Bolton Wanderers, when a reckless elbow on Kostas Konstantinidis got him a red card, a familiar sight to whoever had followed his career. If that wasn't enough, one quarrel that's etched into everyone's memory was the old-style scrap with Newcastle's Robbie Elliott. It was a proper handbag moment that gets the blood pumping. A heated exchange during an Everton-Newcastle match in January 2001 ended with Fergie getting hold of Elliott by the throat, a proper grappler. The red card was as good as money in the bank, with all that did to harden his mad dog image. Carry on like that was pure Premier League drama in its day. It was no longer simply a question of whether Big Dunk could change. Rather, it began to be suspicions of whether Everton could suffer the overdose. The cracks were beginning to show. Once the wrecking ball of Scottish football, now Ferguson was perhaps becoming an expensive luxury. Back in 2003, football journalist Jamie Jackson delivered the damning verdict, arguably the biggest waste of money of all. The numbers really did tell a story. Despite those astronomical wages, Ferguson's influence on the field was in decline. 12 goals in 3 years and a huge £5 million in salary drew some raised eyebrows, but it was the statistic that really bit. In 2002-03, he could muster a grand total of 192 minutes on the pitch, all as a goalless substitute, and at a mind-boggling $9,000 per minute. The Golden Boy had started to tarnish and the legend had already begun to blur. That was a harsh reality for fans to swallow. Their former hero suddenly became a financial liability. The downward path went on. Ferguson's hot-headed image had taken another apex. Accusations of racial abuse lodged against him by Luis Boa Morte of Fulham cast a long shadow, even if, ultimately, the Football Association cleared his name. The stench was still there, but things hardly stopped there. He got another red card for a reckless elbow on Charlton's Herman Hreidarsen, a grimly familiar chapter in his career. The once-loved striker was proving a liability, a ticking time bomb just waiting to explode. The loyalties of Everton at this point were torn between the player they loved and the beast he had become. The end was in sight. The 2005-06 season would prove to be the final act in the turbulent career of Duncan Ferguson. So the fiery Scot stayed true to his reputation with a 7-match ban for a clash with Wigan Athletics' Paul Sharner that spiralled into a full-blooded brawl, the 8th red card of his Premier League career, with the record shared with the equally hot-headed Patrick Vieira. The story was to fittingly unfold at the other end. As captain in his last ever game at Goodison Park, Ferguson scored an injury-time equaliser, but then saw his subsequent penalty saved by the goalkeeper. It was, in other words, his career in microcosm, raw power mixed with frustration, and ultimately downstream to disappointment. As the curtain came down on one of the Premier League's most iconic, yet most controversial figures, he had no new contract on the table. And so ended Ferguson, swapping the roar of the brutality. The question at large, would he be remembered as a footballing colossus or a player whose talent was forever overshadowed by his temper? It wasn't long before the fiery Scotsman was back involved in the game following his retirement. A natural progression saw Ferguson return to Everton, this time in a coaching capacity. The move started by going in as a volunteer at the academy before quick promotions hinged on passion and knowledge. He advanced up the coaching ladder with playing days mentor Alan Irvine to secure his place in the first-team setup. His first taste of managerial responsibility came in 2019 when he was thrown into the hot seat as Everton's caretaker manager following the dismissal of Marco Silva. When he drove Everton to their vital Chelsea win, he was unexpectedly found getting praise for his touchline passion. But the fairy tale was to end. Subsequent managerial appointments at Everton saw Ferguson return to an assistant role before another caretaker spell in 2022. Ultimately, a permanent managerial position eluded him at Goodison Park. It was never an easy task, on the contrary, taking over a struggling team at the wrong end of the table. In 2023, his managerial ambition led him back to League One with Forest Green Rovers. Though known as definitely a hot-headed fellow, it was hard for Ferguson to set alight his new charges at Forest Green, who eventually plummeted to League Two. It was a relatively brief stint, marked by a lack of results and ever-growing frustration. The managerial journey for the former striker has been a real mixed bag. Although nobody can doubt his passion and knowledge for the game, just imagine wanting to rob Big Dunk, who is huge, by the way. We have to pity those poor guys who thought that robbing good old Big Dunk was a great idea. Anyway, things didn't turn out the way the robbers had planned. Ferguson came face to face with a terrifying ordeal in 2001 when burglars targeted his home in Rufford, Lancashire. But Ferguson, 39, sprang out of bed and upstairs to confront the intruders, who he managed to detain one while the other fled. The captive was hospitalized while his accomplice was eventually captured by the cops and received a prison sentence. That incident was not an isolated case. In 2003, history repeated when another brave burglar burgled Ferguson's home at Formby, Merseyside. Again found himself in a confrontation was the Everton striker. Just the tip of the iceberg, Duncan Ferguson laid claim to such a footballing genius, yet at the same time showcased a violent streak that had the foundation laid down early on in his life. In 1991, a young and impetuous Ferguson found himself in trouble with the law for the first time. He got convicted of headbutting a policeman in his native Stirling and imposed a £125 fine. It was a clear indication of a volatile temper that would continue to dog him for the rest of his career. There was a disturbing escalation in Ferguson's behaviour over successive years. He was fined $250 in 1993. Probably the lowest point in Duncan Ferguson's life was a few years later in 1995 when he assaulted a fisherman in a pub in Anstruther, Fife. This was a warning reminder to the troubled footballer. He said he had been falsely arrested and most people knew it was not just. He says he didn't actually do something really very wrong, and he thanked the support he received from fans who kept him going with letters that he said, "I will never forget the letters which rapidly saw me through prison." Information on the actual incident is relatively scant, but it is clear that Ferguson was involved in a violent altercation within a pub in the coastal town of Anstruther. The victim suffered at the hands of the hot-headed striker was a fisherman. It went to court, and Ferguson was nonetheless convicted of assault. He had previous violent offences, so the charges attracted a prison sentence of 3 months. This was quite a hefty blow for a celebrated athlete, and it sent a strong message about the fruits of such behaviour. Even now, Big Dunk hasn't gotten over the entire mess concerning his incarceration. Recently, in an interview, former Rangers and Everton striker Duncan Ferguson has held firm in his belief that the 1994 spell in prison over the assault of Raith Rovers defender John McStay was due to the partiality of the presiding judge. Ferguson insisted that the disturbance, which occurred at an Old Firm match one December and was indeed fiery, was something that developed during all football games and that no case should have been made. He asserted another reason for the prosecution was at hand was because the judge was meant to have favoured one of the other teams of the many that compete with his favourite. The former Scotland international highlighted the fact that at no time had McStay, the referee, nor anyone from the 40,000 crowd complained about the incident. But, unfortunately, Ferguson had prior convictions for assault and was on probation then, something he believes the judge used to his advantage to jail him. There's no doubt now that the limelight of Duncan Ferguson has mellowed the fiery temper of yesteryears. Though still larger than life, the former striker has gained perspective on life and career. He has openly confessed to all his mistakes, particularly the mad relationship he shared with the Scottish Football Association. His decision to withdraw from the national team in protest over a ban was impulsive, which he now realises was a mistake. Failure to represent his country remains a lost opportunity, a fact he still laments. The pig-headedness in him, he said, had been what made him not want to play for his country after a fallout with the SFA. Ferguson's international career was nullified in 1997 over a disagreement concerning the headbutting incident due to a 12-match ban from the SFA. Many requests to get him back in the national team were turned down. He had spoken with regret and admitted that he probably missed the opportunity to play for his nation time and again. He said that one of the moments dragging his career down was not being played for Scotland during the 1998 World Cup. Not only that, but he had an incendiary temperament which repeatedly put him in hot water when he was a player, and he took this into his relationship with the SFA. It is most decidedly because he opted to put personal pride before national pride that he squandered perhaps countless opportunities to don the Scottish jersey. The interviews also unearthed the personal problems that Ferguson had with the issue of discipline. The former striker conceded his stupid red cards and admitted that his temper tantrums could have been much better controlled. He hoped that the fire that had once raged inside and wreaked so much havoc could now be harnessed into something positive. His days coaching budding young players at the Everton Academy showed an entirely different character, focusing on developing their talents and serving as a mentor. Duncan Ferguson is a big Everton Football Club fan, as he has been known to outburst in the public eye at every available opportunity. In 2009, Ferguson very much saved his breath for keeping Everton in our city. He argued Goodison Park was an important identity to the club, which comprised his second home. For him, Everton and Liverpool were just one big family, and he felt if the club is taken somewhere else, it will lose the spirit and the fans. The decision to take the stand by Ferguson showed he was a real Evertonian and earned him respect among the fans and the community. The testimony that would depict him as a true Evertonian at heart and committed to having them carry on the heritage and tradition of the club linked to the fans. In fact, it can be said that with his fiery on-field and off-field antics often getting him into bad waters, Big Dunk quite tried really hard to redeem himself. He has certain issues with being imprisoned, but he has come to terms with his temper and, well, most of the mistakes he made throughout his career. Here's a pint to Big Dunk. We hope he continues to become a better human being, manager, and football coach. Big Dunk was a tornado of emotions. 1 minute he was losing his head, the next he was a hero. From the terraces to the boardroom, he's made his mark on Everton. Whether it's scoring screamers, seeing red, or coaching the next generation, Fergie has always been a character. So that is it for this one. If you are a fan of these football icons, then make sure to look through our other videos. Till then, stay tuned for more sports icons.